from the Penn Libraries.
Something off of it. If you haven't used it before, then I hope that will help get you started and set up and give you some tools for the future.
Great. Sarah, are you able to hear me fine?
I'm able to hear you, Anu.
Great. So I went ahead and I started the recording. So from this point on, we'll be recording. I wanted to actually start by thanking Sarah. So a little bit of history, this workshop started as a workshop that was for the library staff. This is a few months ago, and got a wonderful response. So we've decided to go ahead and offer it to campus. It's our first time teaching this one online, so we'll be very curious about any feedback you have for us, which you can send to us by email or any other way, and I'll put our email address in the chat so you also know where you can send any questions that come up to you after the session has ended. So I was amazed by all the different things that Sarah was able to get Google Analytics to do. Sarah, did you want to start with the poll to ask people if they've used it before?
That would be really useful. Why don't we start out there?
Okay. We're going to go ahead and open this poll, and you could go ahead and take a few seconds to just let us know if you have used it before, you've not used it before, or you can't remember. It looks like we're at 9 votes, and we have 12 people, so we have just a couple more people who need to vote. Great. So we actually have an audience that more than half have already used the program before, so that will be very helpful for us. I'll go ahead and end that poll. And my first question I'm going to ask Sarah is if she can talk a little bit about how long she's been using Google Analytics and how she ends up integrating it into her work flow.
All right, so I've been using Google Analytics for about a year now, and that's when I started working with our repository that I manage, Scholarly Commons, which if you look in one of the links boxes on your page, you should see a link for Scholarly Commons. I'll kind of show you around it later. But I started with Google Analytics about when I started with Scholarly Commons a year ago, and I started using it like every single day, pretty much, so I could get used to it, learn more about it. And then from there on, once I was used to the system, I use it about every week, every 2 weeks now. It's a really nice thing to keep into your workflow. The more that you check it, the more you see how your website's doing. You can get better ideas on how to optimize your website and make it more visible to everyone.
Great, and I think your website in particular, Sarah, it's really important to know the Google Analytics because it includes the writing of so many people around campus, so you're able to understand what is being read and who is reading it.
Most definitely, and we definitely do get a global audience, and so I find it really not only useful but also just interesting to see where all of our users are coming from and how people are using our site and benefiting from it.
So would you like to go ahead and share your screen now and you could start your first demonstration?
Yes. All right. Okay, so I hope everyone can see my screen now. Right now we're on Scholarly Commons, which as I said is the repository that I manage. So Scholarly Commons is Penn's institutional repository. So it's really a collection of a lot of the research being done on campus by professors, departments, schools, and we put a lot of the papers in here that we can so that they are openly accessible to the entire world. So as you can see down here, we actually have a map that's showing where people in the world are reading our literature right now, which is kind of addicting in my opinion. So I'll show you a little bit about Scholarly Commons because this will play into Google Analytics. So in Scholarly Commons, we have all of our research departments, our schools, etc. And inside of each one of these, we have papers. And usually these are divided by years. And each of the papers has its own metadata page and then can also be downloaded, which takes you to an entirely new page with the actual PDF, as you can see. So when using Google Analytics, you really have to think about the way in which your site is set up. You have to think about the URLs you use. and think about how the entire site is categorized. Think of it kind of as bullet points, so you know how things are nested. And that will really help you when you're working with Google Analytics to be able to really drill down into different parts of your site and figure out how to best optimize those portions. So let's go over to Google Analytics. Since most of our users seem to have already be on Google Analytics, have used it before, I'm going to start out with a demonstration on just the basics of how to set up an account. So for those of you who already have an account, you can use this as a little snooze time. You can look at some of the links I've given you. And the rest of you, I know this will be a little bit quick, but I hope that this will be useful for you. So really all you have to do is start out and go to the Google Analytics homepage, www.google.com/analytics. And since right now I'm already logged into my Gmail account, I can just click Access Analytics. If any of you are not logged in, then you would have to sign in or sign up. So I'll click Access Google Analytics, and it takes you to my home page. So these are all of the different websites I'm tracking or say I'm tracking, the main one being Digital Commons, which is our repository. So just to give you all a little caveat, I am not actually the proprietor of our Scholarly Commons site. And when you set up a tracking code for your site, you really need to be the proprietor or know someone who is. What that means is that you need to have access to the source code for your site. When you start a Google Analytics account, you have to be able to paste in that information into your site page so that Google can track all the traffic to your page. So I'll show you. This will maybe make a little bit more sense if you're a little confused in a second. So how to start up an account, you would go to Admin, and under Admin, you can select under Account, Create New Account. And here you can either choose to have a website or a mobile app, and that's really, of course, dependent on what you're trying to track. So the setup is very, very simple, the initial setup. You put an account name. For right now, we'll just say we're going to track Google today. So your account name is going to be what you see on your home page when you saw that I have all sorts of random things on there. Website name is going to be your actual website name. So we'll say Google as well. And then you have to enter in a URL for probably your home page. And that's really most of the requirements that you have to fill in. If you do have an industry, you are welcome to select a category. It's mostly just to help Google be able to better help you track your site. You can, of course, set up different reporting time zones. And this one is in Pacific. You can set it to whatever you want. And then you can also choose different data sharing settings. And if you're setting up your account for the first time, I would suggest reading through these, seeing what works best for you. It's mostly, once again, to help Google optimize your experience with Google Analytics. But really all you need is what you want your account to be named. Yes?
Oh, Sarah, I was just wondering, so when you set up a space in Google Analytics, this is giving you the tracking ID. That tracking ID then needs to be put by the web master into every page. Is that the right process?
Yes, and there are different options for entering that in, so you don't have to put it into every single page. And I won't really be going over that today, but I have provided some resources. I believe it's called Training Center, if you look in the links I've provided. And there is many, many pages on setting that up and how to do that. Does that answer the question?
Great, thank you.
All right, so this might even make a little more sense once we get our tracking ID. You have to accept their terms and service. And then you're taken to a page where you have two options. So you have your tracking code, which you can see down here that was created by what we just put in. And then you also have a tracking ID. So you need to, as Anu said, be able to contact your webmaster to put in this tracking code into all of the pages that you want to track. Or if, for example, you have a blog, some blog sites also allow you to use a tracking ID number, which you can see here. And that's often if you would go into one of your blogs and go into the settings, a lot of times they'll have different options. They'll say enter your Google Analytics tracking ID, and this is what you would put in. So it's a little bit easier than trying to go through and putting in a tracking code. And this is very specific to your site, so I won't really say anything more about how to put this in. As I said, there are quite a few options on the Google Analytics help in their training area that will give you more step-by-step instructions for your page and for whatever type of page that you have to really set this up and make sure that you're tracking everything you need. So those are kind of our two options.
That might be a good time to see if there's any questions so far.
Most definitely.
So what Sarah explained so far, oops, this is the wrong chat. Let's see. So weird how the chat windows are just going away.
There is one thing I'll say. Once you start tracking, for example, you saw me set up this tracking ID for Google. That doesn't mean I'm actually tracking Google right now because I can't put in the tracking code. So once you put in the tracking code, that is when your Google Analytics starts. So if you've already had a website for a few years and you put it in now, you won't be able to see any of your metrics or statistics from past years because the tracking code hasn't been in there.
So I think, Sarah, your voice is going in and out for me. I'm not sure if other people are having the same issue, but I'm losing some words along the way. Let me ask how the audio is for everyone else. Looks like a couple of people. Okay, great. So you have your first question about, are you able to use Google Analytics to track a mini URL or a bit.ly?
I am actually not entirely sure about that. Once again, it's going to just have to be how you set it up. So if you have a mini URL or a bit.ly or something, then you just have to make sure that you have access to the source code for that site. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I guess it's a complicated question. You would need to put the tracking code on the place the bit.ly is taking you to. Is that correct?
Yes.
Not on the bit.ly page itself.
I don't believe so. That might, like I said, that might be another question for the Google tech team.
And these might be things we could also look up and put back onto the tutorial later. I think that's a really good question to keep in mind. It looks like audio is doing great for everyone else. Does anyone else have any other questions about the process of setting up Google Analytics? I think the rest of our time together, Sarah's going to be taking us through an established Google Analytics account. I know when we first turned on Google Analytics on the Weigle Information Commons website, it took a few days for it to kick in. I don't know if that's still the case, but it was not until we had it running for a few months that we were able to draw any conclusions from the results.
From what I've heard, it seems to be about the same for other sites as well. As I said, I did not actually set up this site, so this is where my knowledge is most limited about Google Analytics. And as I said, it really is specific to your site, to your needs, to what you're tracking.
Great. I don't see any other questions, so I guess I'll turn it back over to you to take us on the next guided tour.
All right, so we're going to actually get into the reporting. So as you saw before, here's our home page, and you have, as you can see, this is the Google that I'm attempting to track that we just created. But right now we're going to go into our repository site. So this is the first view you get of Google Analytics. For the next few minutes, I'm really just going to kind of go over and outline how Google Analytics is set up and just really the basic schema and give you an idea of what we'll be talking about for the rest of the sessions today. So as I said, this is what you see when you come into Google Analytics. We're going to start out and I'm going to show you, kind of skip these first few items over here and skip down to audience, acquisition, and behavior. These are what I would consider the most important pieces of your standard reporting, which is what we're doing now. So audience is really going to tell you what type of users are visiting your site. Acquisition is going to get a little bit more into how users are getting to your site, the types of social interactions they're having, talking about your site. And it also gives you options on how to increase your visibility and really improve your search engine optimization, your SEO, which is a variety of things. Basically, search engine optimization is giving you information that allows you to change your site or put more things into your site, alter your site so that it is more visible to those who are trying to find that information. And then finally we have behavior. And behavior is really how your site is working and how people are using it. So for example, how long your pages are taking to load, what your site speed is, what people see when they come to your site, which is in-page analytics. And we'll get into all of that in a little bit. So then we come up here and I'm just going to give you a quick view of the date range. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later. But the date range is usually set when you come in to about 1 month. You can really change this to whatever you want. 2 months if you want to check what happened a few months ago. This is where you can do that. You can set a custom date range. You can also choose from the list up here. So right now I'm just going to cancel, and just keep in mind that for the rest of the session we'll be looking at the past 30 days for this account. And then we'll come back up and since we've already talked about the audience, the acquisition, the behavior, this is more where your dashboard and shortcuts come in. So dashboard is something you can set up, you can add new things to your dashboard, and it really gives you some different areas that you're interested in tracking. So for example, a lot of times I don't have time to go into all the different reports during my day, so I'll just come to my dashboard and check out how things are. And so I've set this up to show some of the things I like to track, such as the different visits, the new visits versus the old visits, that sort of thing, how people are coming to your site. And as we go through the next sections, you'll see more about how these come into play. But the dashboards really just give you a quick overview. Shortcuts is pretty similar. You can set up different shortcuts as you go through your different reporting, and those will appear here. So if you like a certain report, or you create a custom report, like I created this custom report source, this just gives you a quick way to find them. And then finally, I'll just show you a little overview of intelligence events. I find this to be really interesting. What intelligence events do is look for abnormalities in what you would expect from the site. So you can see over here it looks like our users have been down 19% in the past month, which makes sense. We're an academic site. Most people are getting out of school for the summer sort of thing. So that's to be expected. It also tells you when you're up or down, when things are a little bit different from what you'd expect. I actually saw in intelligence events one time we had a spike of about 2,000 users a day. And so I went into Google Analytics and I went through all the reports and figured out that the New York Times had actually linked to one of our pages in our repository. And so Google Analytics was a really great way. I never would have known about that unless I had come into here. So as you can see, these are kind of your just basic shortcuts, quick views, and then down here is more where you get into the actual reporting.
Great. Why don't we, maybe that's a good time to stop for a second. One of the questions I had, Sarah, was how do you know what is a good amount of hits, right? So you said that you were surprised because you had 2,000 per day because of the New York Times article. Do you have a way to know what your goals are for the number of hits?
There is actually a way to set up goals in Google Analytics. Since I'm not the proprietor of our website, I actually can't do that. But you can actually track and set up goals to say you send out maybe a newsletter or a set of emails to people. For me, perhaps I posted a new series to our repository. And you can set up goals and see how many more hits you get during that time. For me, the number of hits, the number of sessions that we have, as you'll see soon, is really determined by how the graphs look and kind of, once again, how these intelligence events change. So as you can see in audience, when you go to overview, it's pretty stable. I mean, we're constantly growing month by month with our numbers in our repository. But for example, on that day, instead of going in a nice bump, we had a spike up here perhaps. And so that's when you know something's a little bit different or something's a little bit off.
That something was a little bit different. Okay, great. Why don't we pause for a second and see if, do you have any questions for Sarah? So far what we've gone through are dashboards and shortcuts and a little bit on intelligence events. We're going to, I guess, Sarah, you're going to take us down through the rest of the menus on the left would be the next piece that you'll be sharing.
Yep, that will be our next stop.
I don't see any typing going on, so I guess we'll go ahead. I'll put the chat away and turn it back over to you, Sarah, for the rest of the guided tour.
All right, so let's
screen again.
Sounds good. All right, so we'll get started with audience, and I'm just going to use language as an example of what you'd see in a basic report. So far we've kind of seen these overviews that's like the dashboard, gives you a quick view of what's going on, what's in these different sections, and when you go into an actual report such as language, this really drills it down for you. So as I said before, audience is really telling you what types of users you're getting, where they're coming from. This is what the page we're on right now is telling you what language their browser is set to. So as you can see, most of our users have their browser set to US English. Our next one is, looks like we're getting a lot of users from China. I'm just going to use this to kind of explain a little bit about how this setup works. So for most of these, you're going to have some sort of graph up here. And this is right now tracking sessions. Sessions is one of the metrics in Google Analytics. So there are two main portions of a Google Analytics report that you need to keep in mind. One is dimensions. Now dimensions describe attributes. So that could be city, region, browser, visitor type, in this case, language. So your attributes, your dimensions, are usually going to be in this first row, and they're going across. The second portion is metrics, and that's all of the information over here. So metrics are measurements, so that's sessions, percent new sessions, new users. They're the things that are giving you actual statistics and measurements about your dimensions. And these can change as we go through. I've actually given you a sheet in the shared documents you should see, and it's a handout for this workshop. And on there I've given you a quick outline of what dimensions and metrics are, and on the back, on the second page, it also gives you some of the common metrics used in Google Analytics, or at least the ones I use. It's a little bit difficult to start out because you have to get used to the terminology and know what these metrics are actually tracking. If you ever get lost or confused while you're using it, you can just hover over one of these question marks and it will tell you what exactly that metric is doing. So right now in this one we're tracking sessions, which is how many times someone has come to your site. This is how many times it's someone that's never been to your site before, the percentage number, whereas this is new users. And then you can also see these are all of the metrics they recently have grouped by your different types of reports. The same thing over here, audience acquisition behavior. So acquisition behavior, we're already in audience. And then I don't use conversions because, once again, I'm not the proprietor of our site, and also it's a little bit more for if you're trying to have paid content. So do you have any questions about...
just to clarify the... Sorry, my question was about acquisition. Let's say you are starting a new campaign and you might acquire a whole bunch of new users. Is there an easy way to find out if they never come back?
Yes, there is. And that's actually going to be in our acquisition session. So as you can see down here, it will actually show... Okay.
I don't want to...
You can look at
I
new
don't want to
users.
disrupt your flow.
All
Why
right.
don't we, let's go back. Let's see, I think there's a lot of new information, right? Lots of new terms. So I'm also wondering, is audio doing fine for everybody? It was earlier. My audio, I'm still losing a few of your words, Sarah, but it might just be my headset. Good, so everyone else is fine. So you have a question about the difference between new sessions and new users. So how does Google Analytics know that it's a new user as opposed to just the same user coming back a second time?
Okay, so as you can see right here, this is actually a percentage of sessions. So that's what you're seeing right here. But new users, as you can see, is first-time users to the site. A new session would be, it could be the same user. So a session is when someone gets onto your site and they may go through multiple pages on your site and they go away and then they could come back later and that would be a different session. So it's kind of a subtle difference. It's something you have to get a little bit used to. But so it looks like if you look at the number of sessions up here compared to the number of new users, that means that people are coming back, old users are coming back for new sessions. Does that make sense?
So I'm assuming then though it's doing it by IP number or something like that. So if the same library computer would be considered the same user, even though it might be multiple students?
I believe so. That's what I've seen from Google Analytics. And they do go a little bit more into how they track things within their website. But it seems it's either by IP range, and then for some of the other areas that we'll be talking about, it might even be that you're logged on, the cookies in your browser, that sort of thing.
Great. And now you have a question from Nadine about the hits for something that looks like nonsense addresses down below about under behavior. I don't know if you want to take that now or if you want to wait until you get to the behavior demo.
Why don't we wait until we get to the behavior demo? And then, Nadine, why don't you maybe give me an example?
Okay. Do we have any other questions on what Sarah just covered, which also had this idea of dimensions and metrics? I think one of the things I find a little hard about Google Analytics is there's quite a lot of terminology, and it takes a little while to figure out what each word means in the Google Analytics context. I don't know if you have any general guidance, Sarah, before you go back to your next demo.
Well, the first thing I did was to create that worksheet that I gave you with the common metrics that I'm using. Otherwise, just to kind of remember the terminology, I always said dimensions are descriptions. Dimensions, descriptions, metrics are measurements, metrics, measurements. So it's a little bit of a weird sort of device, but it helped me get through it.
So I'll mention to everyone that on the left side of your screen, in the Google Analytics box just under everybody's names is a link that says Google Analytics 22 kilobytes. If you click on that and then hit download file, that will give you the handout that Sarah's been mentioning, and we'll also have this the handout posted on our tutorial. But right now you can go ahead and download that, and that will have the definitions that she mentioned. You have another question, Sarah, about videos, which I think is something many people are interested in, is if you have a web page that has a video in it, how do you know people are actually watching the video instead of simply scrolling past it, in a sense? I don't know if you want to talk about that now or if it makes more sense to go into the behavior demo next.
That is, we're actually going to have to go through a little bit more through audience, but that's actually a really good question. I can answer that now because it's a little bit related to your setup. So as I said, there is that technical help area, and that will help you when you have buttons or videos. So as you can see in ours, we have this download button. And so we're actually getting quite a few more downloads than is showing in Google Analytics because we don't, somehow it's not, I believe it's not really set up to be tracking those download clicks. It's mostly tracking these metadata pages. So as you can see on here, it's showing we've had about 23,000 sessions in the past month. We are actually closer to about 200,000 downloads a month. So for me, Google Analytics is just a really nice way to give you an overall view of a sample of our population. But as far as the videos go, that's either going to be part of your setup, or another way to kind of work around that if you're a little bit worried about it is to check the average session duration. So if you have a video on there, you could say that
that's a great idea, because if they're watching the video, they should be there.
They should be there longer. And so depending on how long your video is, you know, if it's a 5-minute video and they stay for 6, that probably means that they watch the whole thing. So that's kind of what I would consider a workaround.
Really so do you define these parts of the pages like the button that you showed? Could you define the section where the video is embedded? And that way, if anybody clicked inside that box, that would indicate that they had hit the play button or at least some button on the video?
I believe so, but once again, that's more of a setup question. And as I said, since I'm not the proprietor of our page, I haven't really been able to play around with that. But I would really suggest, I know there's a lot of help documents with that in the Google Analytics help in the training area, and I would really suggest maybe looking through that, or even just Googling it.
Great.
And just to give you a couple more little tips, you can also, when you see this arrow right here, that means that we're looking at the most number of sessions. You can, of course, click on any of these other metrics, and it will change the data so you can see how different metrics are affecting your dimensions, your descriptions.
Great. Why don't we go back to full screen then, if you want to show us the behavior part of the menu structure.
All right. I'm actually going to go back and show a couple more things about the actual audience menu. So on audience, you can do demographics and interests. Unfortunately, those are not set up for our site right now, so we just get this little page telling us what they are. But demographics and interests will tell you more about what age group are coming to your site, male or female, what sorts of interests they have. Are they interested in sports? Or are they interested in fine dining? That sort of thing. I usually go to the language, as we saw before, and location, which shows you a nice world map of where all your user sessions are coming from. And I found that really useful. It's also a nice graphic if you take a screenshot. So we also have behavior. This is where we're talking a little bit more about new users versus returning users. So this is showing you when you have a unique visitor coming from a unique perhaps IP address compared to how many people you're getting to come back to your site. And of course, you definitely want people to come back. For our site, it's a little unique since we're more of a resource area. We don't mind having a high bounce rate, which means someone comes into your site and then exits immediately. That's okay for us because we're not really looking for page depth. We're not looking for them to really go through the site. We want them to come in and get out. Maybe in a nicer way of saying that, but it just means that they got the resources they needed. And so it's great to have new users, and it's even better for us to have these returning users, meaning that they found something from our site that they liked, and then they were able to find perhaps another paper or article on our site that was also useful for their research or whatever they're doing. And then you can also see, you can see how many times they come back. So we've had some people come back 201 plus times. And if I'm being tracked, that's most likely me. And then engagement. Engagement's going to tell you how long people are spending on your site. And so this is how long they're actually in it on a session. So as you saw, we have a higher bounce rate. People are coming in, looks like they're downloading the paper and taking off. If you have a blog or something, you probably want people to be on your site longer, and you don't want as large of a bounce rate. For us, this is okay. And then technology, this isn't something I really use, but I have found it really interesting.
One thing that would be useful is... Sorry, go ahead.
Technology, this isn't something I really use, but it's really nice. It tells you how many people are using different types of browsers. It also tells you their different types of networks if they give it to you, so if they're on Verizon, Comcast, Time Warner. This is helping you if you have a little more access over optimization. Mobile can be extremely useful for your site. This is telling you what types of mobile devices people are using. So it looks like most of our people are using Apple iPads. And you can even see a nice little picture if you don't know what the device is. So if you see you're getting a lot of device hits from a certain device, that probably means that you want to make sure that your page is actually working properly on those devices. And I know that is a huge thing these days. People aren't always on their computers, more so maybe on their phone or their tablets. And then finally, I'll just show you a user flow. And you'll see this flow set up through many of the different sections. And flows are just giving you how people are moving through your site. So right now, we're set by the dimension, country, or territory. You can change this to anything in here. But right now, we'll just leave it at country territory. So this is showing that a lot of people from the United States are coming to our dissertations. This is actually giving you the number of through traffic, the drop-offs, how many thousands of sessions you have for this page. So this page being our dissertations page. Sorry, it's a little bit difficult to show with a pop-up. And then where they go from there. So a lot of people go from our dissertations to a search, and then some of them go back to dissertations. And if you really want to look at one of these areas, you can click and you can highlight the traffic through that area. So right now we're highlighting the traffic through dissertations. It's showing where people are coming to get to our dissertation and where they're going after. You can also explore traffic, which is the second option. And this gives you more of a succinct look at the traffic, where their step was before they came there, how they got to that page, and where they went after, which can be really useful just to see how people are moving around your site.
Sorry, so every page that's in your site is accessible in this way? So you could look at what's coming in and what's going out per page, or is it per part of your website?
You can look at
page.
So if you look in our collections, actually probably be easier to go this way. Our dissertations, as you can see up here from our URL, this is the page that we are just highlighting in Google Analytics. So if you click onto a certain dissertation, it's going to have this extra portion of the URL. So this is actually tracking a portion of our site, and it's looking at all of the that main dissertations page you just saw, and all of the resulting dissertations that are listed under this. It's called a URI. You can also go and
thank you.
Yeah, some of these, like this one, I think, or some of these might be the very bottom page, just one little page. So you can really do either or. All right, does anyone have any questions about audience? Anything I've gone over?
Yeah, let me put it back down, put the chat back. So quite a lot of different concepts. I've actually never seen that flow part before. I think that could be really helpful to us to figure out where people are going from one page on our site to another page. So I guess we've pretty much addressed the questions that have come in so far. Sarah, did you have any other comments about the questions? I guess we didn't get to the nonsense addresses yet. We'll have to come back to that one.
I think that might be in this behavior area, but I might need a little more clarification. So Nadine, if I've passed over it, you think, then make sure to just let us know. All right, so if we don't have any more questions, then we can move on to acquisition.
Sure, I don't see anyone typing, so I can go ahead and put the chat away for now. Go ahead, it's all yours.
All right, so acquisition I'm going to kind of break up into two parts. The first part is going to tell you more of how users are gained to your site and how to increase your visibility, your search engine optimization. And the second part will just be this little social area. So first of all, acquisition, you can go and look at your traffic. And traffic, this is telling you our attribute here, our dimension is going to be source. So this is telling you the source of how people are getting to your website. So most of our hits, most of our sessions are coming from Google. And organic meaning that we're not paying for it. And of course, if they're coming directly to our site, that means that they're going up into the search box, into the box up here, the address box, and just typing in repository.upenn.edu. So it looks like that's probably more for our users that are returning, whereas Google seems to be getting most of our hits. Referrals is fairly similar to this. This is telling you the different pages that have a URL from your website that are bringing traffic in. So they're referring, it's a source that's referring people to your site. So it looks like we have quite a few of people on Wikipedia. And as you saw, I just clicked on Wikipedia, and this is showing you all of the pages that are on Wikipedia that are leading to our different Google Analytics. If you click on that little box, you can, it will actually take you to the page that's referring people to your site, and somewhere on the site is a link to probably some research on this topic that we have in our repository. And then campaigns, once again, not something I have set up on here, but you can set up campaigns to look at how people are perhaps looking at your cover pages, going to more cover pages if you have a checkout screen, that sort of thing. Keywords I have found extremely useful for search engine optimization. This is telling you the types of keywords, the phrases that people are typing into a search engine like Google in order to get to your site. And so it's really funny, one of our past top keywords to get to our site is acid-base balance. And a lot of times if you go into Google and type acid-base balance, our repository site will come up within the first 5 or 6. And if you want to know where your impressions are for that, that will actually be down in search engine optimization. As you can see, there is a large number of keywords that are not provided. And that just means that people have their browser configured, turned off their cookies, that sort of things that won't allow Google to track that. So once again, Google Analytics for me is just really a nice little screenshot or a little caption of the types of users we're getting that is really, I think, representing the full population. So since we're talking about
being
keywords,
a fraction of the whole, and you're making the assumption that that's representative.
that's what I'm doing. And if you have your site set up correctly, if you have your tracking code in the proper place, you should be getting a really good idea of or maybe even like the full amount of hits that you're getting. But that's really dependent on your setup, which is, of course, really dependent on your web page.
Yep, that makes sense.
All right, so search engine optimization. This is one of my favorite areas. So here's, once again, a lot of the queries, the keywords that people put into Google or something in order to get to our site. And I love the metrics in this section. The metrics here are different and not often accessible on other areas, but they are strictly for search engine optimization. So first of all, we have impressions. This tells you how many times your URL from your website appears on Google, for example. So if you type in advertising in the 1920s, then we're going to have, in like Google, for example, you're going to have 600 pages that link to your site. And clicks is going to tell you how many people actually clicked on your website URL from a Google search. And so it looks like nobody's clicked on it. And then finally, this average position is telling you where on a Google search your website is showing. So advertising 1920s is appearing around page 25. Let's click on this and look. Here's the ones that are appearing in the top as the top option for when people put in, for example, model mismatch. This is the first thing that you'll see when you put in your Google search. And your click-through rate, your CTR, is going to be how many times people have clicked on your site versus how many impressions there are. So as you can see here, here's the little mathematical formula for that. So this is really good to see. For example, model mismatch. A lot of people haven't clicked on it. So this would be a good area to be able to see what sorts of things people are looking for and perhaps add in more of those keywords to your site and maybe get a higher ranking in Google and try and really make sure that, for example, model mismatch, you actually have things on your site that has something to do with model mismatch. Landing pages similarly.
A quick question on that one. How
Yes.
would you recommend people use that information? Would they be changing the text on their website, or would this be more in the metadata header area that they would put down model mismatch? Let's say they wanted to increase the SEO for that particular term.
It could really be both. For me, I would say the more that you can make sure that your site is actually matching that keyword. So, for example, if advertising in 1920s is part of is one of your major words that you're getting, but you're talking about advertising in 2020, then that probably means that people aren't going to be wanting to come to your site. It's not actually going to be hitting it, not going to be a correct hit. And so it's, I would say really looking at the content that you have on your site and making sure that it's matching these keywords and vice versa.
Great, thank you.
And then finally, we're just going to look at landing page. These are the places where people are actually landing. These are the pages that people see when they come into our repository. So it looks like most people are going to our authors page, which is showing some of the different author profiles that people set up. As you can see here, oh, this is the gallery. But it's actually a list of all of our authors, and so that's apparently getting a lot of hits. And so really when you're looking at this, at the landing page, you have to make sure that what's on your landing page is really, for example, if you have a landing page like authors, where you know, it's not our home page, it's kind of this random page on the side. But now that we know that we're having so many people land on it, that means that we're going to want to make sure that there are many options on that page for people to get to other portions of our site, making sure that it has a good menu, making sure that it looks nice, has options for people to go elsewhere and perhaps get more page depth. So that's really the extent of search engine optimization.
So we have just about 10 minutes left. Do you want to go back over to questions and then see what else we can cover? We don't have that much time left, so I'll put the chat window back. As I mentioned,
this is really the biggest session, so.
This is our first time running this online, and we were not sure how long to even schedule the workshop for, and really we've raced through an hour. So what we could do is you know, wind up the formal part of the presentation at 3, but then we'll be happy to take questions and do any additional demos immediately afterwards for anyone that didn't get a chance to have all their questions answered. So I guess one thing that, go ahead, I'm sorry, Sarah, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, let me know if you have any questions, otherwise I'll go over social really quickly.
Oh, Bethany has a question about setting up reports and what kind of reports can you set up and how do you go about setting them up? And then Nadine said she would ask you about the nonsense addresses offline.
Okay. So for reports, for actual reporting, I would suggest really going through your site, seeing what really I guess really speaks to you and what you're trying to do with your site. So for example, if landing page is very important to you, there's a few ways that you can actually be able to share this information with others. So you can set up emails, for example, up here, and so you can set them up for different frequency, once, daily, weekly, etc. Give a day of the week, type it into as many people as you want, and choose how you want the report to appear. And it will be just for, as you can see here, landing pages. You can really mess, I guess you could call it, with these different reports, these standard reports as I call them, where you can choose different dimensions, such as country, For this one, you can also select different metrics, and as you saw, we can click on these sorts of things to change it, be able to get more data that way. Otherwise, I would suggest once you're used to the metrics, the dimensions, what sorts of things are working, I would go to customization, and that will allow you to create custom reports based on different metrics and dimensions, just as you saw before, and allow you to, they call them dimension drill downs. So you can add different dimensions like country, and then you can say their app name, I don't know, so that you'd go there, you could select, for example, once you saw this actual report, it would be, for example, United States, and then you would see how many people had an app name in the United States, etc., etc. And all these can be emailed out, as I said before. Answer it?
Sarah, do you put your reports in your dashboard? What do you use your dashboard for? You had shown us how you had customized it earlier.
Yes, and I don't really use my dashboard that much, but as I said, it's mostly just a quick view. These are actually old reports because they don't call them visits anymore, they call them sessions. But it's just when I find something I like I want to see how many new people we have, how many people we've had in a geographic region, where our source is. This is just a nice way to have a visually impactful look overall without having to go in report by report, and also be able to kind of compare them side to side, I guess.
Great. So once you make a report, you can then add it to your dashboard. So you
Yes.
can have a dashboard for geographic spread and put all your reports related to geography on that dashboard.
Definitely. All right,
We'll
so
be back and I'll bring the chat window. So we just have a few minutes left. Do you want to go ahead and do one more demo? Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, behavior won't take long, and it would be nice to be able to go over that really quickly. So as I said, behavior is going to be kind of how your site is working and how people are using it. And so this is just a really easy thing to go over. My favorite part is the site content with content drill down. So this is similar to the behavior, to the flows that we've seen before, like this behavior flow up here. But you can click on, for example, dissertations, and it shows you their next path level. And so it's really drilling down to the last page that they went to. And I find that really useful. It's the same thing as behavior flow, just kind of in a chart area. You can see where people are landing, similar to what we saw before, their landing pages that they're coming into. And you can view those pages by clicking on the little expand box. And then seeing where they're exiting. So they came in, where are they leaving? Is there a reason that they're leaving at that place? Do you not have enough navigation? That can also help with your search engine optimization. Site speed, it will tell you how your pages are reacting. If you have any slow ones, you'll see that over here. So this page appears to be pretty slow to load. And it also gives you speed suggestions. So if you are proprietor of your site, then you can go into speed suggestions, and if it loads, this will tell you, give you suggestions on things you can do to your site to make it faster and make it more user-friendly. I don't know if that's going to load. Oh, there we go. And so this goes page by page and gives you, for example, in this one, 6 total suggestions that you could do to that page, to our dissertations page, to make it faster. You can see that here, and even shows you how to fix it. It's pretty nice, if you can do that to your site. Site search is
so helpful.
Yeah. Site search is going to tell you about internal searches on your site. So this is telling me how many people came to our site and used our search box and how many people didn't. Search terms, here's the search terms they put into our site compared to what they would, for example, put into Google in order to come to our site. And then pages, these are the pages that they started on. And the final thing I'm going to show you in here is in-page analytics. And this was extremely useful for me. We actually just redesigned our Scholarly Commons website. And I actually use this in-page analytics, as you can see over here. I just downloaded the plugin, and so this is what you'd see if you came to the Google Analytics page. But on here it shows you where people are clicking, what percentage of people are clicking where, and how many clicks those are. And it also shows you in color, or you can also see how people are viewing your page, as in what their browsers are showing you. So I found that really useful in designing our new site. I realized people weren't really clicking down here, so we actually added all these buttons up here. And so Google Analytics actually played a huge role in when we were redesigning our site. So that's about it for behavior.
So helpful to see. Well, I think we're pretty much at time. I do think that last comment you made was so important, Sarah, that you used Google Analytics to actually change your new website. So you were able to use what you learned from the analytics to inform a whole new presentation of your content. So we have just about 2 minutes left before we sign off. And as I mentioned, Sarah and I would be happy to stay a little bit later. You're okay with that, Sarah, for a little bit?
Most definitely, yes.
To stay and do any more demos. Great. Looks like a couple of people are typing, so we'll give them time to get their questions in. We'll send you an email later on so that you can give us some feedback on the session, just with a form that you can fill out to let us know how it went. You have a question about events, about whether you could use an event to track a video.
I believe so, but once again, I can't really, I don't have the option to use events. Just because I'm not the administrator to our site. So unfortunately, I'm really sorry, but I haven't really been able to use that. From what I've read, it sounds like you can use events to track that. Sounds like you can set it up so you can tell when you put your goals on, when you put your video on, and track usage before and after. But once again, I'm sorry, that's not really my area.
Sarah, I wanted to say thank you for taking time to present the session today. I think it's like you've discovered so many things about Google Analytics, and what's neat also is the particular site you have for the repository. It's such an interesting site because it has so many nooks and crannies that the Google Analytics helps you figure out what is being read by whom and at what time.
It does. And I suggest for anyone using Google Analytics to really just play around with the site. The more that you're on it, the more that you find, the more that you see and use it, the more you'll be able to really apply it to your site specifically.